Good news, everyone! Tonight, states fight for trans rights, celebrations of trans people in India, in film, and more. Good news starts right now. First up, meet the designer of the trans flag, Monica Helms, from NPR affiliate WYSO. In Monica Helms' own words, "I was having dinner with Michael Page, who is the creator of the bisexual pride flag. That and the rainbow flag were the only two that existed then. He said, the trans community could use a flag too. And I gave it some thought, but he said you got to keep it simple because the least amount of stitches, the cheaper it is for them to sell it." So, about 2 weeks later, I woke up one morning and the image of the flag came to me. So I got up, drew it out, and said, "That looks good." I contacted the people who made the bisexual flag and they sent me some swatches. And I picked out the swatches. A week later, they sent me the first flag. The story is pretty simple, but people started asking me all the time, what is that? And, I had to tell them everything about it, and where can they get one? And it just started building and building. And I didn't realize behind the scenes that everything was building to where it turned out as it is today. It was not until 2013 that I started seeing the flag and the colors at Pride events worldwide, and I thought, oh my God, it's catching on. People are using it. Since I got the first one, I had to find out where I could put it to keep it safe. So I decided to start at the top. I contacted the Smithsonian as they were beginning to collect LGBTQ items. So yeah, they were interested. So in 2014, I donated the flag to the Smithsonian. It was on the same day, 15 years earlier, that I had created the flag. So I call August 19th Transgender Flag Day. Blue is the traditional color for baby boys. Pink is for girls. But the white stripe in the middle is for those people who are non-binary or gender fluid or don't have any gender thoughts at all. They fit in the white part. The design is such that no matter which way you fly it, it's always correct, which signifies us finding correctness in our own lives. Next up, India celebrates Maharashtra's first trans Dol Tashti troupe from the India Express. The entire country is currently celebrating Ganesh Chaturthi, and nowhere else is it celebrated with more festivities than in Maharashtra. But this time around, in addition to loads of blessings and opportunities for joyous celebrations, Bappa brought with him a fresh tide of inclusivity. The very first fully transgender Dol Tashti troupe performed in Pune as the Ganeshotsav celebrations began. Here's a video that went worldwide on the website formerly known as Twitter. The troupe is called Sekhandi, and its founder, Manasvi Golkar, was tired of being rejected by other Dol Tashti troupes. The Dol Tashti space is traditionally dominated by men, and only recently have women started to become involved in participating. However, when it comes to including trans people, the space seems to be somewhat lacking. The Khandi is a famous character from Hindu folklore who began as a female and transitioned to become a male. The character is an important one because she is proof that queer and trans people, contrary to conventional belief, have always been an important part of Indian culture and not a modern or Western invention. Next up, New Jersey joins the fight against bans on trans healthcare. From the New Jersey Monitor, New Jersey has joined 19 other states in asking the U.S. Supreme Court to block a Tennessee law that bans gender-affirming care for transgender youth. In a brief filed to the court on Tuesday, the state's attorneys general argued that gender-affirming care is endorsed by every major medical organization, and categorically denying youth access to it, quote, departs from traditional norms of state medical regulation. It also violates their constitutional right to equal protection under the laws. Quote, gender-affirming care can provide highly beneficial, indeed potentially life-saving treatment to transgender adolescents with gender dysphoria, the attorneys wrote, and clinical standards of care account for any limited risks of that treatment by requiring doctors to make individualized findings that gender-affirming care is medically necessary. New Jersey Attorney General Matt Platkin seconded that sentiment on social media Tuesday, writing, quote, as the medical community recognizes, gender-affirming care saves lives. Governor Phil Murphy last year declared New Jersey a safe haven for transgender and non-binary people seeking gender-affirming care. New Jersey has more than 45,000 transgender and non-binary residents, according to the Williams Institute at UCLA. The other states joining the petition filed Tuesday include all of New Jersey's nearest neighbors, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, New York, and Connecticut. Tennessee's 2023 law prohibits doctors from providing transgender care for minors, including puberty blockers, we'll get back to that soon, hormones, and surgeries. Several families of transgender youth sued to block the law, and the U.S. Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals upheld it. The American Civil Liberties Union and Lambda Legal asked the Supreme Court to review the case, and the High Court agreed in June to hear it this fall. A decision is expected next summer. Yes, the Tennessee ban is being actively opposed by almost half of the states, including Tennessee. From NBC. More than 30 prominent Republican officials and conservative leaders filed an amicus brief with the U.S. Supreme Court on Tuesday, opposing a Tennessee law that bars transition-related care for minors. Quote, while the government has a role in keeping kids safe, that role is limited, and it does not justify the state second-guessing the judgments of parents acting in good faith who are best positioned to know what their children need. According to the brief, states have no business overruling the decisions of fit parents who make an informed medical choice for their children that is supported by their doctors, by the medical profession more generally, by the children themselves, and by their conscience. At present, a total of 26 states have measures restricting transgender care for minors, some for adults as well, while 16 states and the District of Columbia have shield laws that protect access to care. Among the signatories of the Tennessee brief are 8 former Republican members of Congress. Republican Congressional Representative Ilyana Ros-Lehtinen said, quote, it is imperative that we come together as Republicans, conservatives, parents, and advocates to stand in support of individual liberties and non-discrimination protections while preserving limited government and parental rights. Representative Ros-Lehtinen is the mother of Rodrigo Hang-Lehtinen, the executive director of Advocates for Trans Equality, formerly the National Center for Transgender Equality, the largest trans rights advocacy group in the country. She said, quote, we can all agree that the government should not stand in the way of parents making well-informed decisions. This brief emphasizes that the court must recognize that blanket bans pose serious risks to members of the LGBT community, limited government, and personal freedom. In addition to arguing that the Tennessee law violates parents' constitutional rights to raise their children, the brief argues that the law violates the Equal Protection Clause by allowing cisgender children who aren't trans to receive puberty blockers, hormone therapy, and surgery for other reasons. Cisgender children may be prescribed puberty blockers, for example, if they begin puberty too early. This brief marks one of the largest groups of current and former Republican officials to take a stand against restrictions on trans health care Chris Sander, a Missouri House representative who signed the brief, opposed state bills to restrict trans healthcare and trans student athletes' participation on school sports teams last year from the House floor. When the Missouri House voted on the bill to restrict transition-related care for minors, Sander, who is a gay man, told the Associated Press he was considering leaving his party after his Republican colleagues wouldn't allow him to speak on the bill. He said, quote, "It's not partisan to be gay or trans. It has nothing to do with being a Republican or a Democrat. They want to make it about party politics." Some legal experts feared that a Supreme Court decision in favor of Tennessee's law could be the first step at undermining key arguments used in Bostock versus Clayton County, as they both use the Equal Protection Clause to argue against discrimination based on gender identity. If Tennessee and other states with healthcare restrictions can impose their will on parents, then so can states and local governments that think differently. For instance, by allowing or even requiring schools to shut parents out of discussions regarding their child's gender expression. Beyond the gender identity context, there is no end to the kinds of parental decisions that local, state, or federal officials could hijack whenever they think they know better than parents. On the other side of things, also on Tuesday, more than 160 Democratic members of Congress filed a separate amicus brief to the court, pointing out that Tennessee's law is both unscientific and dangerous. And when you see both Republicans and Democrats standing up against discrimination, it's a pretty clear sign that the people who stand against us have gone way, way too far. But we're not done. Kentucky also joins in the battle to protect health care for kids. From LEO Weekly, Kentucky parents of transgender children are arguing that children in states like Kentucky and Tennessee need medication to help their transgender students, as bans in the two states discriminate specifically against transgender youth. As a result of said discrimination, other youth are able to obtain the same medications that these trans children need for similar reasons, but because they aren't trans, they're not denied access. Corey Shapiro, legal director at the ACLU of Kentucky, said, quote, "The parents challenging these laws have seen firsthand the positive impact appropriate medical care has had on their children's well-being and the detrimental health impacts their kids experience without it. Denying these treatments to transgender youth who need them is not only unlawful, it is heartbreaking for parents. We are proud to represent these Kentucky families and will continue to fight for their right to make decisions for their families without government interference." According to the ACLU of Kentucky, medical professionals say that the established treatments for transgender youth are safe, effective, and necessary to protect transgender adolescents' well-being. More on that coming up. But to continue on, despite the consensus, 26 states have passed laws that ban this medical care only for trans youth, which makes the upcoming Supreme Court decision in the U.S. versus Scrimeti so pivotal. Reviewing an opinion from the Sixth Circuit Court, which in turn reversed a district court decision that blocked the bans in the first place, it balances two precedents against each other. The Bostock decision, but also a Sixth Circuit Court decision that reversed another court decision, and it's high stakes and chaotic. Which is why it is so wonderful to see representatives from all the states involved, from both sides of the political spectrum, everyone standing up and saying, this is really bad for a whole lot of reasons. We need to stop this nonsense now. Because unlike accusations from the unhinged extremists on the far right, this is actually harming children. Not to mention being extremely illegal. But all of this is only necessary because there has been such a push to fearmonger over trans healthcare. So, good news, we have new data in tonight's Science Spotlight. According to a new study, puberty blockers are still safe, effective, and reversible. From ABC Australia. An independent review commissioned by the New South Wales government in the wake of a four-corner story into gender-affirming care for children has found that puberty suppression treatment is still safe, effective, and reversible, but calls for more long-term quality research. The NSW government commissioned the report by the Sachs Institute in the wake of the Four Corners report into gender-affirming care and a growing dispute among some clinicians in New South Wales about what was best for children with gender issues, as a polarizing and sometimes toxic debate over the gender affirmation model plays out around the world. Gender-affirming care can include puberty blockers to suppress puberty for young people distressed by their changing body. In some cases, this is followed by HRT, or hormone replacement therapy, to change people's bodies to better align with their gender identity. A Four Corners investigation into Westmead Children's Hospital's troubled gender clinic revealed it had only seen 3 new patients as of July last year, and was struggling to operate in the wake of a string of staff resignations linked to the publication of controversial research endorsed by the hospital hierarchy. The paper, published in 2021, found that there were, quote, high rates of adverse childhood experiences, including family conflict, parental mental illness, and loss of important figures via separation among a sample of 79 children who sought help at the hospital's gender service. Notably, none of the ill effects were directly due to either the children's medical condition or the medical care they received, but social backlash due to prejudice. The Sachs Institute identified 17 studies pertaining to puberty suppression treatment in the evidence check update and said, quote, broadly, the newly identified evidence reinforced the finding of the previous evidence check regarding benefits and effectiveness. That is to say, puberty-suppressing agents were reported to be safe, effective, and reversible. They found that in regard to risks and potential harms, reductions in bone density remain the primary concern with puberty suppressants, and monitoring of bone mineral density is recommended. They did, however, add a qualification that the strength of evidence on that count remains low. The report goes on to say that there are also a number of new studies providing evidence pertaining to the psychological benefits of hormone replacement therapy as well. The identified studies reported positive results across the domains of body image, gender dysphoria, depression, anxiety, self-harm risk, quality of life, and cognitive function. The Sachs Review update also identified 8 studies evaluating surgery for young people, including one systematic review with the updated evidence report generally positive findings for gender dysphoria, psychosocial outcomes, and sexual function, as well as quality of life. However, there were neutral findings on the psychosocial outcomes in transgender men, as well as mixed positive-negative findings on quality of life. The report finds that the irreversible nature of surgery remains a key risk, although regret rates remain shockingly low. Researchers said, quote, findings were generally positive across these studies on sexual function, gender incongruence, and chest dysphoria. Offsetting potential limitations are also 3 high-quality comparative studies with positive findings specific to adolescents. Furthermore, most studies report that interventions are both acceptable and safe, with no risks or potential harms reported. In other words, the academic support for gender-affirming care, particularly for trans youth, continues to grow stronger every time we look. From puberty blockers to hormone replacement therapy to surgical options when that seems necessary. Across the board, and even in areas polarized by bitter political divides, the evidence keeps coming in that this stuff helps, that this stuff is useful, safe, effective, and saves trans kids' lives. While some states are fighting to end bans on trans healthcare, other states are correctly banning discrimination instead. For instance, one Vermont school has screwed over its entire student body in the name of trans hate. From ABC News, a Vermont Christian school that is barred from participating in the state sports league after it withdrew its high school girls basketball team from a playoff game because a transgender student was playing on the opposing team has taken its case to a federal appeals court. Mid-Vermont Christian School forfeited the February 21st, 2023 game, saying it believed that the transgender player jeopardized the fairness of the game and the safety of their players. The Executive Council of the Vermont Principals Association, which governs school sports and activities, ruled that the school had violated the council's policies on race, gender, and disability awareness, and therefore was ineligible to participate in future games. Period. Every courtroom's favorite hate group, the Alliance Defending Freedom, which represents Mid-Vermont Christian and some students and parents, filed a brief August 30th with the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit in New York, accusing the state of violating the school's First Amendment rights. It said Mid-Vermont Christian, which has competed in the state sports association for nearly 30 years, forfeited a single game to, quote, avoid violating its religious beliefs. Ryan Tucker, senior counsel for the Alliance Defending Freedom, said in a statement, quote, no religious school or their students and parents should be denied equal access to publicly available benefits simply for holding to their religious beliefs. Although apparently students should be denied access to equal participation based solely on someone else's religious beliefs, Tucker said the Vermont Principals Association expelled Mid-Vermont and its students from all middle school and high school sporting events and used discretionary policies applied on a case-by-case basis to do so. In June, a federal judge in Vermont denied a request by the school and some students and parents to be readmitted to the State Sports Association. U.S. District Court Judge Jeffrey Crawford wrote that the state is unlikely to be found to have violated the school's First Amendment rights, including its right to free exercise of religion, because it applies its athletic policy uniformly and doesn't target religious organizations for enforcement or discrimination. Quote, the Vermont Principals Association Committee identified the actions of Mid-Vermont in stigmatizing a transgender student who had every right to play as the basis for the discipline, the judge wrote. The committee upheld the expulsion, identifying participation as the goal of high school sports. The school was invited to seek readmission to the Sports Association if it agreed to abide by VPA policies and Vermont law, and confirmed that its teams would compete with other schools who have transgender players. But Mid-Vermont Christian makes no bones about its intent to continue to forfeit games in which it believes a transgender student is playing, and so they seek readmission on the condition that it will not be penalized if it blatantly discriminates against a protected class of minority individuals. Similarly, out in Colorado, one couple is left out in the cold because of a policy preventing discrimination. From KLEW. Parents of a Colorado elementary school student sued a district over a policy that a transgender student should room with a cisgender classmate on overnight trips. Joe and Serena Wales, whose daughter is in the 5th grade in Jeffco Public Schools, claims the district has not allowed them to opt their child out of a rule grouping trans students with classmates identifying as the same gender on school trips. The lawsuit follows 2 letters the parents sent asking the district to allow them to opt out. Those requests were denied, according to an Alliance Defending Freedom representative representing the family. ADF senior counsel Kate Anderson wrote in a press release, quote, the district must grant our clients reasonable request for accommodations that can be accomplished in a number of confidential ways that protect the privacy of all students. Anderson continued, if Jefferson County Public Schools is going to continue placing students of the same gender in the same room on overnight trips, as it confirmed it would, the district must let parents be the ones to make decisions about their children's privacy. They must provide the information necessary to inform parents about this policy so parents can make the best decisions for their children. The Waleses claimed that their first letter to Jeffco Public Schools that the policy violates their parental rights to discriminate against other people's children and the privacy of all students. The district said in a statement to Crisis in the Classroom at the time that while it is still determining facts, it is taking the situation seriously. ADF legal counsel Mallory Sleight of Hand says the lawsuit is now being filed because the district continues to override the voice of parents by ignoring their right to discriminate on behalf of their children. In a statement last Thursday, the district told CITC that after a cursory review of court filings, it disagrees with a number of the claims. We look forward to having an opportunity in court to share the facts, including the reasonable accommodations we do offer families and students, the district said. Families always have the ultimate choice whether their student participates in any unique programming that involves overnight accommodations. And our top story, Will Farrell's new movie, Will and Harper, isn't just trans-affirming, but trans-celebrating. From Variety, Netflix has unveiled the trailer for Will Farrell's road trip documentary, Will and Harper, which premiered at the 2024 Sundance Film Festival. The streaming giant acquired distribution rights to the film in February. The official synopsis of Will and Harper from Netflix reads, 2 years ago, Will Farrell was filming a movie when he received a most surprising email. His dear friend of nearly 30 years was coming out to him as a trans woman. That friend was Harper Steele, a writer Will met on his first day at Saturday Night Live back in 1995. From that fateful first meeting in the halls of 30 Rock, Will knew he had found a match made in comedy, and their friendship and creative partnership would only continue to grow over the next 3 decades. In this intimate, honest, and heartfelt documentary, Will and Harper hit the open road together to process this new stage of their friendship and reintroduce Harper to the country she loves, this time as herself. Over 16 days, the two drive from New York to LA, visiting stops that are meaningful to them, their friendship, and to America. Through laughter, tears, and many cans of Pringles, they push past their comfort zones as they re-examine their relationship to these spaces and to each other in this new light. Steele wrote some of Farrell's most iconic SNL characters during their 7-year run together. The two have remained close friends since, and most recently collaborated on the 2020 comedy film Eurovision Song Contest, The Story of Fire Saga. The filmmakers told Netflix in a statement, "We are thrilled about how audiences received the movie with open arms at Sundance. It's a movie about the power of friendship and acceptance, and we hope that it can help shift the culture." Will and Harper will be streaming on Netflix starting September 27th. If you enjoy content like this, make sure to subscribe. Support our work by becoming a patron at patreon.com/thetranspositions and reap heaps of benefits. Our meme of the week was posted by Ascalon. And if you want to become a mysterious creature of the dark and forbidden, join us on Discord. Also, if you have good news concerning trans people you'd like to see reported on, you can tell us about that in the Discord as well. For the Transpositions, I've been Ember Belrad.